Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're a new subscriber, you're welcome to the family, and if you're an oldie, hey, please, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Let's grow this baby. Okay, so in today's video I'll be showing you guys how to install a lace closure to make your closure wigs. If this is the kind of thing you're interested in, please keep watching. Let's get into this. You would need your scissors, you need a rat tail comb, you need your thread, of course, a C-curve needle. You don't necessarily need a C-curve needle, you can use a straight needle. You need your T-pins, of course, and your duck clip. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell if you haven't. Up next, definitely you need your wig cap. This is where you would attach your lace closure and your wefts when you start making your wig. Then of course you need your canvas head. After you may have measured your head, it ranges from a 22 to a 24. For this wig I'm using a 23 head circumference, and if you notice on this canvas head, that is where I marked which will be the beginning of my wigs. That is where I fix my wig cap. So now I'm installing the wig cap on the canvas head. After I have done that, I'm going to adjust the wig cap and make sure there are no folds on it at all, making sure that my wig cap starts at the point where I have marked on the canvas head. Now I'm going to use my T-pins to secure the wig cap so it doesn't move when I start installing my closure. So I'm just making sure everything is snug and tight and there are no bumps on the wig. Feel free to adjust this as well to make sure that you don't have any bumps. That's very important. Right, so everything looks good now. Everywhere is smooth and there are no bumps. So now you can go ahead and start. Good. So now I have my closure. I've already bleached my closure. This is a 5x5 closure, which is now one of my best. In fact, it's my best closure that I like to use because I really don't have time for a frontal. So now I'm going to install, I'm going to pin down my closure on my wigs. This is the center part closure. So I'm going to use the parts of the closure to eyeball the center of my wig. Now I have done that, I'm just going to adjust it and make sure that everything is sitting in the right position. And then up next, make sure you're very careful when you're doing this. Make sure that the center part aligns with the middle of your canvas head. And then I'm just going to pin it down from all corners. When I pin the front, I'm going to follow that line straight to the back and then pin the back and make sure that it is secured. Then I'm just going to take the hair out of the way to enable me stretch the closure and pin down the other sides, the other ends of the closure. So I'm going to pin the right and the left side, making sure it is smooth, there are no folds whatsoever. I'm also stretching it out to make sure that I don't have any folds at all. Feel free to adjust this. You might not get it the first time, so feel free to adjust it. Okay, so that is done. I'm going to move the hair to make sure that I'm able to secure the other side of the closure. So I'm going to pull it down and then use my T-pins to secure that end as well, making sure that the closure lays flat on the wig cap from both sides. So I'm just going to use the T-pin and secure that area. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Make sure it lays very flat. So you can see there are no folds at all. So you do the same thing on this other side as well. Pull, make sure it lays flat, and you use your T-pins to secure. You can hold it down with your finger while you get your T-pins so that you don't have any folds when you're pinning it down. Apply pressure so the closure doesn't move, and then you pin it down, and that's it. Right, you can see it's flat on all corners, and that is exactly how you want your closure to lay on your wig cap. No folds. That's it, we've got this. Okay, so now we're going to just take the hair out of the way. I'm going to use my duck clip. I'm going to use the comb to brush it nicely and take away any stray hairs, and then I would be using my duck clip to hold down the hairs, making sure that none is out of place, and this is to avoid any distractions when I start sewing. So I'm going to hold it from every corner. I'm going to hold it from the back and the sides. So now we're moving on to threading. This is going to be very difficult for me to explain, but I'll try my best. So now I'm going to pull the thread long enough for me to sew both ends of my closure, because I sew my closures from the middle to one side and to the other side. After I've pulled my thread to a reasonable length, I go ahead and fold my thread. When I fold it, I take the folded part and pass it through the eye of my needle, and then I pull back to make sure that the side I'm currently pulling gets to the same length as the one I had previously pulled, if that makes sense. It's a bit confusing, but if you follow the steps you will get it. So now I've gotten to the same length, I'm going to use my scissors to snip it and then knot the thread. To knot my thread, I simply wrap my thread around my finger and roll it back in. You might have another method to knot your thread. The goal is just knot your thread, but this is how I do mine. So any excess I have after the knots, I just go ahead, take my scissors and I snip it, and then we're ready to start sewing. The goal for threading my needle that way is to make sure that my needle is thick enough to secure my closure. Now I'm going to show you two methods on how to knot your thread when you're sewing on your closure. This is the first method. I'm passing my needle through my closure, through my wig cap, and then I put my finger in between both sides of my thread. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope you understand. What I'm trying to do is to just put my finger in between, separate the thread, and then I pass my needle through that hole, and then I pull it back. You form your knot. It's that simple. It's not difficult at all. So I'm just pulling it now. I pull it through to the end. Sometimes I put my finger in between to avoid any kind of tangling, and I guide the thread to match exactly where I had knotted my thread initially. So I make sure that knot ends at the end of the knot I'm trying to make on my closure, if that makes sense. So now that I have knotted it, I'm still going to ensure extra security on that first knot by wrapping my thread 3 times around my needle. I'm picking the thread that is coming from the eye of the needle, and I'm going to wrap it 2 or 3 times around my needle. I'll do that stitch 2 times to make sure that it is super secure. You can go ahead and do it 3 times. And then after I have done it, I'm doing it again now. So I'm wrapping it 2 times and I'm pulling my needle. That's to make sure that there's extra security from the initial knot. Then after I've done that, I'll now go ahead to now start wrapping that thread just once around my needle to form my stitches. I'm just going to do it a few times so you can get the hang of it. I like to put my finger in between my thread to avoid any kind of tangling. You can see my stitch is already forming. Make sure you don't give wide spaces. I know you can be in a hurry to finish it, but trust me, the end is always very, very satisfying. So that's me just doing it, and yeah, I'm going to run that stitch through to the end of that closure. Yeah, so now we're done, and you can see how neat and even it is to the end. So we have done one side. I'm going to do the other side. Now I'm going to show you how to knot your thread a second way. And actually, this is how I knot my thread. I kind of find the other one a bit complicating, and the thread can tangle at any point in time. So now what I'm also doing, I'm still passing my needle, of course, through my closure and my weft. Now I'm going to pull the thread to the end, almost to the end, holding my thread. And then when I'm very close to the end, you can see me holding both ends of the thread. I would knot my thread. So here I'm just about to knot the thread. I knot the thread and I pull it back down. I try to guide it for the knot to end exactly where the knot on the thread ends, if that makes sense. So for any time you hear knot and thread, like or give a comment, okay? So I just pull it back and you see it's secure. So that's the second method. So that was the first method to do the other side, and I'm showing you the second method. So whichever one is easier for you, go ahead and do it. Also, notice now that what I'm doing now, I'm no longer pulling my thread from the beginning or from the eye of the needle. I will start, because I'm working on the other side of my stitch, I will pull my thread from the thread that is coming out from my closure. Remember, when we were sewing the other side, we were sewing from the thread coming from the needle. We were wrapping the thread coming from the eye of the needle. But at this point, I would use the thread coming from the closure. Just watch closely. If you don't understand this step, please take back the video and follow through. So now I am wrapping that thread 2 to 3 times around, and of course knotting it using my finger as a guide. If you see that you've messed up, just use your needle to pull it and adjust the thread. So now I'm going on with my stitch. I'm going to start wrapping the thread just once. You see, I'm picking from the thread coming out from the closure. This part is so confusing, but if you take back the video a few times, you're going to understand it. So now I'm stitching that side, and I'll show you how I close my stitch. So now I'm towards the end of my closure, and I will show you how I knot my stitches. I like to knot the last few stitches just like I started. So now you can see I have wrapped the thread around my needle 2 times to make sure that those few last stitches are very, very secure. And this is my very last stitch. I'm wrapping it 2-3 times. I'm pulling. Make sure that it is secure, guys. You don't want to finish sewing your wig and your closure is falling apart. So now I'm done with the stitches. I'm just going to pick up the scissors and give like a few inches, a reasonable space, and you snip your thread. Go ahead and separate that thread again and form your knots like 2 or 3 times to make sure that your closure is extra secure. So that's it, guys. That's how I attach my closure to my wig cap. You can see the stitches, it's very neat. Make sure your stitches are neat, guys. It doesn't matter even if you're the only one wearing it, that satisfaction is there. So now that we're done with that, I decided to do something extra for you guys. I'm going to show you. Remember, this wig, I'm making this wig using a sewing machine. So I'm going to show you how I draw the lines on my wig cap using a Sharpie, or you can use a white pencil if you don't have a Sharpie, or a white marker. I'm going to use it to draw my lines, which will guide me when I am sewing with my machine. So from the bottom, I like to start my stitch, remember I like to use a wig cap, a proper structured wig cap. So I draw my first line right under, draw that first line under, and then what I do is to skip. When you're using a structured wig cap, there is a point where you have the spaces where your wig band is supposed to help with security for your wigs. So your wig band is supposed to go into those holes to help secure your wig. Now, I do not like to sew on that space because I like to use it as an extra security. That is why when I'm making my wigs, I don't cut that band, because it also helps as a form of security when you're wearing your wig. So what I do after I've drawn my first line, I like to leave that space, skip it, and then draw my next line right after the hoops. After I have done that, you just keep on drawing those lines across. Keep drawing them. Be careful with your spacing. You do the same thing again and again and again and again. Now at the top part of my wig, I'm just going to draw the lines across the extra space left there. From here I can see I have about 10 or 11 lines. I'm making a curly wig, so I'm not really bothered about the spacing I'm giving. However, if you find that your spacing might be too wide, you can fill it in. So any extra space you have, it's room for you to still fill in your wig if you find that your wig is too scanty. So it's not a problem at all. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and of course share. I'd like to see your comments, and I'll see you in my next one. Be good to yourself, love yourself, and of course love others. Stay safe, guys. Stay safe.